Today on the channel, we looked back and we counted down the best and worst of 2024. Now we turn our attention to what I want to see in 2025.
And the spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever!
Welcome everyone, Kyle here, back again with another countdown-esque video, and I'll explain here as today we're going to talk about what I want to see in 2025, and this is a top 10 list. However, it is in no particular order. Got 10 different properties I want to talk about and what I hope to see in 2025 for each one of these properties. Say it's like a New Year's resolution of what I want to see out of these companies, what I hope they adapt and change to, how they correct and course correct a few different things. And we won't do this in an order. Usually it's start at number 10, work our way to number 1. It's just going to be different companies at different numbers here, but it's what I want to see from the different properties that we collect and follow, of course, on this YouTube channel. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below at the end of this video. Your thoughts for some of these toy lines. Maybe you collect all these, maybe you collect a couple of them, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. So without further ado, let's kick this one off. Let's kick it off at number 10. We begin the countdown at number 10, and like I said, no particular order in this countdown, but I wanted to go to the WWE Mattel line to start off, what I hope to see in 2025. And one thing we've been talking about for a few months on the channel, and the flames are starting to get stoked a little higher and higher with some of the rumors going around. Of course, we heard this week as I'm filming this, TNA and WWE forming a bit of a partnership for wrestlers to go back and forth, and we'd heard and talked about it on the channel a few months back about hopefully and sounding like there's going to be a WWE TNA line. However, it wasn't going to be current talent. It was going to be the AJ Styles of the world, the Motor City Machine Guns, the Abysses of the world, the guys that are in WWE right now getting figures to represent their time in TNA. It'd be a perfect time to get the Motor City Machine Guns for the first time. Obviously, a lot of AJ Styles you could do. You could even dive into the Kurt Angles of the world who had time over there, the Booker T's, some of the legends over the years, giving us their looks from their time in TNA. Maybe finally getting a Bully Ray Dudley. There's a lot of instances, and I think they could have some meat on the bone on those. Let's say the Monday Night Wars kind of ends towards the late half of 2025. It could be a new one, a TNA WWE line crossover as the Walmart one. So I'd love to see something like that. Maybe a Mattel Creations exclusive, however they want to go about branding that, however it goes out there. I do think that would feel new. It would feel fresh. Got to remember, TNA isn't massive, but I think there's enough hardcore fans that would love to get some of those wrestlers from TNA. And who knows, maybe the future holds Mattel gets some of the TNA current day stuff down the road. That would be interesting. We know they're signed to Powertown. We'll talk more about that in this very video. But it'd be very interesting to see where that goes in the future, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that. Also, I think a lot of us want to see new performers. I want to see all the current day NXT talent, some of the new performers on Raw, SmackDown get figures in 2025. Have to imagine we'll see that. We've always seen that. However, I want to see WWE Mattel brand go back to the Legends. We've heard rumors of a Jesse Ventura figure. We know he's signed a Legends deal. We know he's back on Saturday Night's Main Event. You got to think he'll be in the Coliseum collection eventually. Would love him in the Legends line, announcer versions of Jesse. There's a lot of meat on the old Jesse bone. We know Tito Santana, Coco Beware have all but signed a Legends deal. Have to imagine Rick the Model Martel will be signing a Legends deal. We're seeing this playbook now where a lot of these guys and gals signing with some of the third-party companies, getting signed, getting some figures made, then jumping to the WWE. And on the back half, others leaving WWE brand deals, going to the retro lines and stuff like that, like we saw Macho Man Randy Savage and Ric Flair do over the last couple of years. So I'm sure more of that will come, but I would love to see guys like Outback Jack celebrated. That was my first ever wrestling figure as a kid. Can't believe I'm still collecting all these years later after having your first figure, Outback Jack. but that's a story for another day. But I would love to see stuff like that. But then, of course, the biggest thing, I think a lot of us at the end of 2024 and already into 2025 are hoping Mattel gets these figured out with these factory issues. Issue after issue coming out of the Vietnam factory. Hopefully they can get that dialed in. Some of the paint imperfections, some of the joint problems, we need to get all that stuff fixed. We need to get back rolling with Mattel. It really is a dip in quality with Mattel that has really hurt the brand over the last couple of months. It's becoming a running joke in some Facebook groups and things like that. Man, I hate this whole Vietnam thing. It has been very difficult, and it's always to be expected when you switch factories. It takes a while to dial it in and get it back to how it was before. I just hope they can speed the process up. I thought it was corrected, but man, Elite 115, which we just recently unboxed on the channel, has taken a little bit of a step back in quality again. So hopefully they get that all straightened out, squared out into the future. And we'll see where that goes, and we'll keep eyes on that on every single review we do this year. But then, last but certainly not least, if they are done with the Coliseum collection, they're done with some of these other things, maybe towards the end of the year. I don't know what may happen. I would love to see them dive into a Hasbro subline where we get Hasbro versions of characters in the Elite style. I would love to see that Ultimate Warrior 1 in an Elite style. So I think that would be a fun line for the future. But that's just some of the stuff I want to see, hopefully, in 2025 from the WWE Mattel brand. Next up, we're at the number 9 spot, and number 9, I wanted to go to Mondo Toys. You know me, I'm a sucker for these Mondo figures. I've been collecting all the X-Men animated series, all the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe stuff, dabbling in some Batman, dabbling in some Spider-Man, dabbling in some movie properties. I'm all over the board on the Mondo stuff. But much like Mattel we just talked about, Mondo has had a little tough go with some of the quality goods on that one. And it really got me thinking the other day, is I don't buy a ton of Mondo figures. Obviously, they don't release huge waves like WWE, Marvel Legends, and stuff. You know, you get maybe a couple of figures a month if you net it all out. However, I've had a lot of quality issues. When you've had 5 figures and 4 of the 5 have quality issues, when they've only released like 6 figures during that time frame, that's not a good look. Where Mattel, hey, maybe they release 40 figures a month, let's call it, between all the different wrestling brands, and you got 7 that have issues. Still not good, but Mondo really struggling, and it's got to be very expensive. I know Mondo, I complained, I said, hey, I got all these issues with my Spider-Man. They sent me a brand new body without a head. It should be on the way to me right now. That can't be cheap for them to have to replace that, and if many people are doing that, it's just not good for them. Now, kudos to Mondo for their customer service. I've had issues over the years with She-Ra, Spider-Man, Omega Red. A lot of figures I've had issues with. I love the Mondo figures. Some are a little bit more difficult than others. I feel like the quality on the current day He-Man, the current day Thundercat stuff, very good. Struggling on the X-Men, struggling on the Spider-Man, at least from what I've reviewed here on the channel. And as I always say, my mileage, your mileage may vary compared to my mileage. But I hope they can dial in the quality, because, man, they have had a heck of a run over the last couple of years of some very cool figures. Can't wait to see where everything goes in 2025. Personally, I hope they dial it back just a little bit, because it feels like they just have release after release after release. They got to do a better job of spacing it out, evening it out, and that starts with a calendar and a roadmap like anything else. But it feels like sometimes we get pretty bottled up with a lot of pre-orders from Mondo, and especially some more expensive ones, and then something comes right after it. And I think they are missing sales. If they would pace it out just a little bit more, I think they would get some more sales. But a lot of times, myself included, I say, well, which one do I like better? I'm going to have to pick and choose, and that's why I had to dive out of the Spider-Man line, of course, and some of the other ones, the X-Men repaint ones, I guess we'll call them. Had to dive out. It's just too much coming at you. And nobody should be a completist with Mondo. I don't know who could afford it, but it is a little bit of a struggle over the last year in 2024 with that. And I hope some of that gets course corrected, but most importantly, hopefully, they fix the quality issues in 2025. Next up, remember, no particular order here. We're going to go to the Hasbro Marvel Legends line. And Marvel Legends, a little up and down, peaks and valleys. A lot of feel like we've been here before. It feels like we get Spider-Man, Wolverine, some of the usual suspects, the Ironmans on a constant clip, but we put our business hat on. We do understand that. But Marvel really trying to find their way over the last couple of years. Still some amazing figures, still some great figures, but I think they're trying to say, do we do the traditional waves we've done in the past? Do we do Target, Walmart exclusive, Amazon exclusives? Do we do fan channel exclusives? How do we get back to the powerful retail presence we once had? You go to Target, for instance, They're usually on an end cap only, not space in the aisle. Obviously, there's business decisions, negotiations in that one, and they've had some rough peg warmers, but then on the flip side, they've had some really good figures that have really moved pretty quick. But it does feel a little harder to get our Marvel Legends. Doesn't feel as easy as it once was. It feels like distribution to the traditional store outlets not as easy as it used to be, but we have the J's, Toys and Games, the Entertainment Earths of the world to fill in the gaps if need be. But I hope the distribution gets a little bit more solidified here in 2025 compared to 2024, maybe even 2023, especially with some of these store exclusives. We've seen a lot of the Walmart ones just basically be online exclusives, never even go to the stores, which is a weird power move, we'll call it, from the couch, is what we'll call that one there. But we just recently came off a live stream as I'm filming this for Marvel, and one of the things I wanted to see was more retro-style carded figures. I feel those resonate with their audience, and myself included, more than their traditional packaging, and now we just saw this new comic book on a more retro style card. So apparently Hasbro is seeing that same message, getting that same feedback, and they're already diving into some of the stuff I want to see. Think that is a very, very cool idea. I'm very intrigued by the Ultimate Spider-Man, the Maximum Spider-Man, I think they're calling it. Basically their version of the Ultimates. Very interested to see where that goes. I wonder if they're going to take anything out of the Mattel playbook, because feels really special when you get just a few a year, but if you start getting 4 a month or 4 every other month, takes a little shine off of them if you ask me, and then it's a more expensive price point, probably around $40. Going to be a little bit more difficult for collectors to collect. So I hope they keep that Maximum line very special. Let's release 1 a quarter, maybe 3 a year, 4 a year, maybe no more than 5 a year, 6 a year, something like that. But let's keep it low. Let's not hammer us with all these Ultimates. And you got to imagine it's going to be for only the heaviest of heavy hitters at that price point. But very intrigued where that one will go. I do miss the days of Build-A-Figures. I miss getting Build-A-Figures on a regular basis. It seems they've switched that model to just deluxe packs, things like that. Fan channel exclusives for some of those more deluxe ones. We've also seen like the Dragon Man, for instance, going up on Hasbro Pulse only. So I think that is where they're moving a lot of the larger size figures for. Sounds like no HasLab this year. I've said it. We've talked about it a lot in our Toy News videos over the last few months. Feels like there's HasLab burnout, the big project burnout where you have to pay for it. It comes a year later. People don't want these companies sitting on our money anymore. We're all kind of sick of that. It was the norm for a long time. Now we want stuff just turning and burning coming to us. Nobody wants to give hundreds of dollars to a company and then sit there and wait for a year plus sometimes. And I think Hasbro's seeing that maybe more than others, as they said no HasLab in 2025. So I found that to be very interesting here. But a lot of good stuff coming from Marvel Legends. I'm very intrigued by this new first appearance comic book line. Very intrigued by the Maximum line, and very interested to see where we go this year between Target, Walmart, Amazon, and fan channel releases, and then of course brick and mortar releases on top of that. So should be an interesting year for the Marvel Legends. Next up, in what I want to see in 2025, we're at the number 7 spot, and very fittingly enough, we're going to Super 7 for number 7. Be very interesting year for Super 7, as there's rumors that, you know, things like the G.I. Joe Ultimate line, the Turtles traditional Playmate inspired line is maybe coming to an end. Nothing officially announced yet, but we haven't heard much lately. They're going to different versions of the Turtles is what it seems to for the Super 7 line. But it's going to be interesting where that all goes. And then, of course, the mix of reaction into the Super 7 Ultimates. And then, of course, the new deluxe versions we're seeing at Targets and online retailers as well. So all these different ones. I have to imagine we're going to see the step up even more in 2025 of deluxe figures, because it's a simple business process. You put that business hat on. You want to get the most out of your mold. So you're going to come out with more of these figures that are basically re-releases, a little bit cheaper to release, get some more money, get funneling into some other things. I see the strategy there. I just hope they can make some of these deluxes just different enough to make people that bought the Ultimates dive into that. So we'll see if that ends up happening as we dive through 2025. But I'm going to be very interested to see where the deluxe lines go and how it intermingles between the Ultimates, Reaction, and some of the other lines that Super 7 does bring out. I'm hopeful we get an announcement for another Lemmy figure. The last 2 years have been great to get Lemmy. Obviously, I'm biased. I love Motorhead. I love Lemmy. Give me all the Lemmys. Give me Captain Lemmy. Give me Old Man Lemmy. Give me really young Lemmy. Give me all the Lemmys. Nothing announced at this time, but I hope we get another Lemmy announced for an Ultimate Edition. in 2025 somewhere. Even better if we can get it in hand in 2025. And of course, I love heavy metal music. I love the music style Ultimate figures. I would love to see more Metallica members if that is even a possibility. I think we're good for Cliff Burton, but would love to see some other members if that is possible, especially Kill 'Em All era. Give me Dave Mustaine, give me some of those. But I'd love to see Judas Priest. We know they've made Rob Halford reaction figures. I would love to see a Rob Halford Ultimate. I'd love to see Slayer, the rest of the guys, the core original members. I'd love to see more heavy metal Ultimate figures. Not sure how well those are selling. It is very niche, of course, as we do know, but I would love to see some more of that in 2025. Be it up for pre-order, at least in our hand would be nice as well. And then I guess we'll just see from there where it goes with Super 7 is, will they do any more big play sets? Last and certainly not least, any day now I should have the Super 7 Thundercats Cat Slayer. That's going to be a big, big boy. Of course, they did other buildings in the past, or I should say play sets with, of course, Snake Mountain. Will we see something like that again this year? Could we see another big vehicle like the Thunder Tank? Be very interesting to keep an eye on that and what property it would be for. Before this Cat Slayer, I think the last big thing we got was probably the Turtle Wagon, I think is what it probably was. I think so. I think that was after the Thunder Tank, so that would have been it. So do they have anything like that up their sleeve? I guess we'll see what happens with Super 7 in 2025. We're in the mix with number 6, and number 6 we go to the AEW Jazwares brand. The ups and downs of Jazwares has been documented over the last couple of years. Still trying to kind of reset and find their way, it feels like. Trying to get really caught up is what it really feels like here. But two things I would love to see in 2025. I'm not going to hold my breath on one, and I'm really going to hold my breath on the other one. And the one I'm going to hold my breath on the most is they get the staining fixed. That has been one of the dredges of the Jazwares line from AEW since the get-go. Anytime it gets stained figures, it is very, very disappointing, especially when you get them fresh. When you're one of the first ones, you get it from ringside, you get it very early, and it's already stained. I just think about 6 months later, when these actually do hit the stores at Targets and Walmart, how much staining is going to be on those figures compared to the early ones. So definitely not a good look. Hopefully that is fixed. We've been talking about it for years. Hopefully this is the year they finally dial in and fix all that staining. Also, I know I'm a broken record. Get me the pinless joints. I'm ready for pinless joints. They've showed they can do it on Supreme. Let's move it into the unmatched, unrivaled ringside exclusives and so forth. If they got to dial something back, do it to get the pinless joints, especially on the female figures. Those pins are so god-awful, and I know, I hear it from a lot of people say, well, if you go pinless joints, the joints are tougher to move. That isn't always the case. Now, Mattel's had their quality issues well documented, but you look at some of the other lines, G.I. Joe, Marvel Legends, some of those are smooth as butter, including Mattel Elites. Sometimes you might have to heat it up just a little bit, but I do think it looks so much better and more appealing to the eye, where the pinless joints take your eyes out of it, and they also are more prone to be loose, and I'd rather have tight joints than loose joints, as I always do say. So would love to see the adaptation to pinless joints in 2025. Fingers crossed that happens. We talked about it with Super 7. We talked about vehicles. We talked about play sets. Could we finally start getting some of that from AEW? They've threatened it for a long time. We know Jerry Padawer is not scared of that kind of stuff from his Jakks days. Could he be helming some of this over there for Jazwares, getting some play sets, some arena setups, things like that. Now, we did get an entrance stage in cardboard. One of these days, I'll unbox that one. It's been sitting in my collection forever. I need to unbox it and see what all the fuss is about. But could we see more of that stuff? Now, it's been rumored with the golf cart, things like that. Hopefully, we see a little bit of that stuff. They don't need to do it a ton of times, but maybe 1 or 2 times a year would be pretty cool, I do say. I don't think we need any more rings. We've got enough ringside rings. There's been enough time where I can see them putting another ring out, but I think we're all ringed out thanks to Mattel. So I don't know if we really need another AEW ring at this point. Maybe 2026. We'll see what happens. But I would like to see a couple of vehicles and play sets sometime. I'd also like to see this year more current releases. They've said that. They got to get caught up on stuff. But it's really rough when you just unbox a Wardlow figure that's on Target. He hasn't been on TV in a long time. It's currently on the pegs. It's from like an episode from like 2 years ago. That's pretty tough to move through. And we understand you can't have something that happened on TV last month on the shelves. But you should be aiming for at least hopefully in a year span. hopefully they get to that, and I believe they are diligently working to that in the future, so we'll stay tuned for that. And then last but certainly not least, I would love to see Jazwares diving more into their legends. They got the opportunity to make a lot of legend figures that aren't being made. Obviously, Sting is one of the big ones that come to mind, and we're finally going to get some Surfer Stings this year. Been wanting that for a long time, some more deep cut Stings. But let's dive into some other Legends ones. You got the Jerichos under the contracts. You got Dean Malenko. I would think there'd be a way you could get Dean Malenko out there. He's backstage. Maybe more Jerry Lynn figures would be cool. We saw him in the Ring of Honor line. I just think there is some meat on the bone. They don't have the deep Legends roster like WWE, but they got enough they could dive into, and I hope they see some more of that in 2025. I think that would give a good boost to AEW and the Jazwares brand for sure. So fingers crossed at number 6 for the AEW Jazwares lines. Right at the middle of the road, you got your list together, which you hope to see for your favorite properties in 2025. What do you hope to see comes? What do you hope improvements are made? Put it in the comments down below. But here we are at number 5, and this is probably the dark horse of the list that maybe nobody would know I even have on my list, but I'm putting it on here for one reason, and we'll get to it. It is the toy company called Fresh Monkey Fiction. Now, they dabble in a lot of different lines. I think their most popular line, or the one I hear about the most, is all their Santas, elves, all that kind of stuff, sold via Big Bad Toy Store. I've dabbled in that. Those are pretty cool. Getting a little bit long in the tooth for me. I'm not the biggest Santa collector, but if you're loving a Santa collection, man, you're loving this whole line. But they do have some cool stuff, and I love that it marries over with other toy lines if you want to do that. So I have to imagine we'll see more of that stuff at the end of this year for next year as far as pre-orders do go. We also see their Operation Monster Force, which looks like a very fun line, a very cool line that I would love to dive into. However, there's only so much space and there's only so much money to collect these lines, and I am buying the Valaverse stuff. I got into that, and they were just lucky enough to beat them to the punch, I guess, in my collecting. But I would love to dabble. I'd love to try some of those out. Maybe I will one of these days. We'll see what happens, but you can only collect so much stuff. But the Monster Force continues on. They got more waves of that coming. But the one thing I really want to talk about with Fresh Monkey Fiction, we saw a little bit of a render, I guess, in 2024. It's been absolute silence since. I am hoping it gets released this year. It is the 80s toy line that I never got to collect, that I always wanted to, that I would love an update from. And apparently they're going to make more G.I. Joe classified scale version of Cops and Crooks from the old school cartoon. Very excited when that was mentioned. I think at Joe Lanta last year, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully we get some more info. Hopefully we get pre-orders, and hopefully we get them in our hands in 2025. However, I got a bad feeling it might be like June. They finally go for pre-order, and we'll get them in June of 2026. So long wait. Hopefully it would be worth the wait. But man, that is one line I always wanted to collect that I hope I can have a chance to before my collecting time is up. But I hope Fresh Monkey Fiction gets those in our hand for 2025. So for number 5 for me, Fresh Monkey Fiction. Working our way through the countdown at number 4, and remember, this is in no particular order for this countdown, a rare one-off part of our countdown here. But number 4, we're going to go to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe for all the properties they have going. Very excited to see what this Thundercats crossover brings. I hope it brings some traditional Lion-Os and some of the core Thundercats, that we can have them looking like He-Man, that we can maybe mix in with our origins. Have a feeling, though, we're going to see somebody mixed with somebody. I could see like a Battle Cat human form and a Panther human form type thing. I could see some of that going on, which I guess is to be expected, but I'm very interested to see where this line ends up going. I do feel Thundercats and the Master Universe is a really good marriage, where the Turtles and He-Man, as I've said repeatedly in my reviews, they're a close marriage, but not perfect. Thundercats feels like it would fit together a little bit better for me. And that's just me and my personal opinion, but I'm very excited to see where that goes, and excited to see when that goes. I don't know. We heard about it at San Diego Comic-Con for the first time. I'm not sure exactly. They haven't said, hey, Turtles Grayskull is done. Last wave coming in July. August will be Thundercats. Maybe they'll cross over a little bit. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm very excited to see where that one goes. Very excited to see the Masters of the Universe new Eternia line. A lot of people, they're really collecting that one. It seems that has taken over for the more 30 points of articulation scale figures. Very interested to see what else we can get from new Eternia in 2025, as that has been a very fun line, and dare I say a sleeper line with a lot of good figures this last year, and hopefully more to come this year. Recently unboxed just a few new ones on the channel as well. Check those reviews out if you did miss it. I hope we finally finally finish off the Origins line. It'd be great to be done with that in 2025, moving on to something else. They just have a few figures they got to still put out there. Of course, they like to mix in some new fresh blood every once in a while, which is okay, but I would be okay with putting that line to rest. We've made everybody from the olden days, made a few new ones. Be a good time to move on. We'll see what happens in 2025 there. And then one we haven't heard much about, especially after things went a little bit south, it was the Snake Lair. A lot of people felt there was a little bait and switch. They thought it was too expensive. Mattel has been very mum on that. So is it totally canceled? Will we see something at San Diego Comic-Con where they try it again? A lot of uncertainty with that one, but I would love to hear what the status is of that. Are they going back to the drawing board, which that's what I can only assume? We're going to get something totally different. Be very interesting to see where that Snake Lair goes in 2025. And that's all I'm wondering about with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe for 2025. Down to the final three, and of course, you know this guy from the couch, he had to get in the crosshairs a little bit here. Todd, you better listen up, put your socks and shoes and preferably your pants back on, but we got to talk McFarlane Toys here. I want to see in 2025, they've dabbled a little bit last year. Let's go all in this year. Let's get more Kenner Superpowers inspired figures in the DC multiverse. Absolutely love that idea. I've loved what they did with the Penguin and Joker last year and a few others. I would love to see more of that. Just speaking of my 80s play-in day hearts, I would love to see that. Very, very fun. And much like AEW, let's see those pinless joints, Todd. I think it's time to step up. I know you love the pins there. I know you got pins in your knees. You got pins in your toes? Oh my. But I would love to see pinless joints on the DC multiverse. I would love to see that. I would love to see the DC multiverse line almost more like the new Eternia line from He-Man. How about that? I'd love to see the pinless joints like that. A little bit smoother, a little bit not as clunky sometimes. That would be very nice to see as well. Obviously, 2025, we talked about it a few weeks back, maybe a month at this point, on Toy News. You know, there's a lot of rumors toy lines are coming up. Disney might go somewhere else. McFarlane may lose, you know, the DC line and maybe grab Marvel Legends. There could be a lot of trade over in 2025. That would be very, very interesting to see. I don't know what that means for me and probably a lot of you as collectors. If Hasbro's no longer making Marvel Legends or Todd's no longer making DC Multiverse, they switched. What would that mean for us as collectors? A lot of us, myself included, I don't feel like starting over. I feel like, especially Marvel Legends, I'm in so deep for so many years. I think it's one of those times where you say, you know, I think I'm just calling it quits. I think I'm out of the superhero game. I don't know. There's only so much money to go around. There's only so much room. And do we want all of those characters all to be remade already all over again from two different lines? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where all that nets out in the future, but it could be a very dicey, crazy 2025 if brands start switching and flopping around, including McFarlane Toys. I would love to see personally them continue the live streams. I said that before. I was very happy that they did something. I feel McFarlane has, obviously Todd McFarlane, he does a lot of work. He does live stream, he does shorts, he does Instagram videos. He works pretty hard off my couch. But Todd, you're not the common man. You're not Dusty Rhodes, let's be honest. And I don't think anybody envisions you going to Walmart and Target to find an action figure. So I think they need a team, much like the Hasbro team, to really promote their stuff. And let's be honest, you know, Dwight and those guys over there, and Ryan, of course, over on Marvel Legends, and Dan, don't forget Dan, they're over there. They are representing the common man. They're collecting, they're pushing out the Marvel Legends, but man, Todd and his crew, they got so many different brands they could talk about. I think every month they could easily do an hour-long show of all the different properties and a special spotlight and stuff. So I think there's meat on the bone there to connect with the consumer a little bit more than they do. I would love to see that. I would also love to see Todd take a chance at like a crowdfund or a play set. Now he did do the medieval Spawn and stuff, but I would love to see him do a big, large play set like a Batcave or something. Let's just do it once. Let's see what the cost may be. Let's see what all is entailed with it. I think it'd be very interesting because we've seen him from Mattel, we've seen him from Hasbro, but we've never seen him from McFarlane Toys. So I think that could be something that would be very interesting in the future, and I could see them tackling something like that as well. So there's a lot of stuff the DC line, and of course Spawn and all the other stuff McFarlane Toys does. Would love to see them dive into some stuff, and they're the company that can actually take a lot of risks because they aren't owned by you know, the stocks and all that kind of stuff. They are owned by Todd McFarlane, so obviously they have a few people to talk to, but they can be a little bit more out there on some of their ideas and not have to worry about making the stockholders mad and stuff. So going to be a very interesting year in 2025 for Todd McFarlane and the boys, and of course my couch. Getting closer and closer to being done with this list. How about that? But number 2, I'm putting it all together. I'm putting it as Miscellaneous Wrestling. This incorporates Power Town, our good friends. Shout out to Magnum TA out there, Power Town. A lot going on with Power Town. A lot going on with the retro lines, of course, Grapplers and Gimmicks, Epic Toys, Title Run Toys, KWK, Zombie Sailor, Mattel Retros. I mean, there's a lot of retros going on out there. I'd be very interested to see where all the retros go. Retro overload is a thing. It is even personally for me. There's so much coming out on a consistent basis. It's hard to keep up with everything. And if you're just an ancillary fan, your head is spinning, which probably makes you just tune out as a whole. I think in 2025, I'd love to see more partner ups. We just saw Grapplers and Gimmicks and Rush Collectibles partner up here with a Return of the Living Dead line. I think that is interesting. But I would like to see some more of these ones partner up and use connections together to make themselves a little bit more powerful. I know there's a lot of business dealings. It's tough to do that kind of stuff. It's tough to intermingle everything, but I think that's how some of these will get ahead and farther ahead than the competition. It's just like any company. If you're, let's use grocery company, you're Dots Pretzels. I'm sure we've all had Dots Pretzels once upon a time. The little pretzel that could, it keeps going. All of a sudden you're seeing displays everywhere. You knew the day big company come knocking on the door, and that's what happened. They sold for like $1 billion or whatever it was, and then they got integrated in, and now hopefully you're going to be more powerful by doing that. And I think that's where some of these retro lines need to go. They need to form a union, team up, do that kind of stuff. I think that's how they're going to get ahead, because there's so much stuff coming out, and you got to do whatever you can to get ahead. Now, we've seen the Grapplers and Gimmicks really climb really high. We've seen Zombie Sailor kind of mixing in and getting passed up in 2024. Zombie's had some great stuff, but it felt like his competition is starting to equal his quality or even exceed his quality in a lot of ways. So he's got to do something special, but I tell you what, Zombie's got that ace up his sleeve like a young Motorhead. He does have, of course, the Mattel-style, Elite-style figures coming. Brian Pillman, King Kong Bundy, Jeff Jarrett, and assuming a Macho Man in the future, I think that is what will really separate the heels and faces Zombie Sailor Toys from all the rest of the competition. Still do the retros, but let's lean into some of these superstars that have never got Elite style figures. If he could put out Macho Man Randy Savage, he could put out the Road Warriors and the Legion of Doom. He could dive into a first time ever Dino Bravo, Power and Glory. I think there's more meat on the bone currently as we sit right here, and I sit right here at this table, for Elite style figures from Zombie than there are retros, because you got the Epics, the KWKs, the Grapplers and Gimmicks, Title Run Toys, all on his heels. This is a way he can break away from the pack. I would focus more of my energy towards those than the retros. Was still dabbling in the retros, and I think that is what I would do if I was wearing the business hat over at Zombie Sailor Toys in 2025. But I think the Elite style is the way for him, and I'm very excited to see how those net out when we get those supposedly Q1 2025. Power Town, we talked about it. I don't know what's going on with Power Town. I say it all the time. Everybody kind of views me as Mr. Negative against Power Town, but I'm just calling it like I see it, and I say it all the time. I am rooting for Power Town more than anybody. I'm a classics guy. Jakks Class Superstars. Heck, I wrote the book on it. Pick up the book if you have not. I want all that stuff. I want all these characters. I'm the ones of the world that want the Vern Gagnes. Give me the Greg Gagne figure. I want that more than the average Joe, but Power Town making it very difficult. I just wish they would communicate more. When you're a smaller company, they're not Mattel, they're not Hasbro, they're not NECA, they're not Super 7. What do you do to get ahead in business? If you're a smaller company, what do you got to win at? You got to win at customer service. That's what you got to win at. And they are so far down the list of customer service with not telling us anything. We're finding out more from Brian Myers and Matt Cardona on the Major Wrestling Figure podcast about their own figures than we really are from Power Town. So if I'm on Power Town, they reel that thing in and say, hey, we can't beat the big boys on price and figures on a consistent basis, but one thing we can do is customer service. Anybody can win on customer service. I say it all the time. I may not be the smartest guy in the room in any meeting I'm in, but guess what? Kyle shows up 20 minutes, 30 minutes early to every single meeting. I study, I listen, I pay attention. That's half of it, if not more, right there. And then you communicate effectively. That's free to do. Communication's free in this day and age. An email blast, a social media post, they can do that for free. They might not be able to win all the other big stuff, but the communication they can win on. And there's been such a lack of communication. You know, they ended up giving everybody a free figure. That was a whole thing. We talked about that at length on the channel, which is a nice gesture, but it was still didn't make up for them sitting on our money for so long. When you look at the interest and all that was gained there. And then they gave us new timetables on things. They gave us, hey, Better get your orders in. One last chance, November 24th. As we're here, right here in the middle of January, you can still order it. So they tricked everybody. Oh, man, I wasn't sure, but I only got till this time. I better get it. So they got your money earlier than they have to. I could legit go right now and order the Remcos, which I did over a year ago. I could do it right now. So they sat on all that money for me for a year with nothing happening. It is just very disappointing. And like I said, you got to be forward-facing. You got to be out there. Make your consumer happy. Because as we say it all the time, once again, broken record Kyle, you lose a customer a loaf at a time, you get them back a slice at a time, and for small companies, a slice at a time, it's not possible. You're never going to get back there. There's too many slices in that loaf. You can't do it. And as we're sitting here, January, they promised us the Remcos would be in our hand. Well, with 2 weeks left, I don't understand how they could be shipped to me and at my door within 2 weeks when I don't even think they've been on a boat yet. We got Chinese New Year right on the heels of that. I don't see those Remcos until March at best, most likely maybe April and May. And then what's that mean for the Ultra Series 2, the TNA Series 2, the MLW announcements? I don't know. Powertown, I'm rooting for them. I just hope they can take something and figure it out. Hey, they're a business. I'm not. They should be smarter than me. So I'm hoping they can figure out a way to course correct, steer the ship in the right direction because they have a lot of promise over there and they got a lot of talent signed as well. So we'll stay tuned. Obviously, we'll keep a close eye on that. Can't wait till the day I can review all these figures here on the channel. MLW and Lucha figures. I'd love to see more Lucha Libre figures. A sleeping giant in the action figure collecting game, but I would love to see some of the WCW cruiserweights that transcend just Mexican wrestling fans into more of American fans. If you can get me the La Parcas and Juventud Guerreros, Cyclope, Damien 666, get me some of those characters. Man, I think that would really be something really cool. And then get us old school ones, the Mil Mascarases of the world, the Dos Carrasas. Get me some of those. I'd love to see some of those. Get me Santo. Can we get Santo? I'm here for some of that, so I'm anxious to see what more Lucha Libre wrestling style figures we get this year. And then last but certainly not least, the big rubber guys. They have a lot of momentum. They feel almost like they have the most momentum of anybody. It's a dangerous game though. They got to walk as they can't put out too much product at a time. 4 figures a month is a lot. I mean, I think I would love to see it at 2 figures a month. However, if as long as the customers are paying and it works out, you got to strike while the iron's hot. I understand that. But it's a very expensive collection. And I know they would be the first to tell you. We're not telling anybody to be a completist. But you know me and my brain, especially in the childhood LJN style figures, I'm going to want to be a completist. So I'm anxious to see where those end up going in 2025. I think we got a lot of cool surprises and a lot of fun figures in the future from us for the big rubber guys. So can't wait to see what's next for them as well. So there's number 2. That's all kind of retro, miscellaneous wrestling all wrapped up in one. But we got one left to talk about. And I think you guys probably know what I want to talk about at number 1. Here we go. We're at the top spot. I guess we're going to call it the top spot, but like I said multiple times, no particular order right here. However, normally every Thursday on the channel, we got a top 5, top 10 countdown. Those are in order. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like countdown videos. And who knows, maybe we'll do some more business talk videos in the future from a guy that's actually sat in the desk negotiating with many major customers, including Target and Walmart, for his job for 30 years now. I can't believe it. I'm an old man. There you go. But here we are at number 1, and no secret here. I wear the love on my sleeve. It is G.I. Joe brand. I love G.I. Joe Classified. It is so fun for me. Of course, that's where I always think of wrestling, and G.I. Joe really put the passion of action figure collecting in me. I started with He-Man and some Star Wars, but it really accelerated with G.I. Joe and wrestling. So always going to be special to me. Always ties back to my childhood. So many great memories getting home after school and just for 5 hours sitting on the floor playing G.I. Joe while I watched the cartoons, while I watched other cartoons, while I watched wrestling. Just a magical time that we're always searching for. We're always searching for that magical time. Again, it was just no worries except playing, and that was a fun, fun time. So that's what the G.I. Joe brand always represents to me, and I'm very excited for the future. A lot of good stuff over the last year. They're seemingly firing on all cylinders. One of the most popular toy lines going today, if not the most popular. That depends who you ask, I guess. But there's a lot of stuff I still want to see out of the Joe brand. They're getting, I don't want to say long in the tooth, but we're well over 100 figures in the line. And we've had a lot of the major players done. However, there's still some major players to go. And I got to imagine we're going to start seeing some retreads down the line. Think of the Star Wars brand from Hasbro. Of course, Darth Vader's out there continually. Luke Skywalker, Han Solo. You got to think the Cobra Commanders of the world, the Destros of the world, the Flints of the world, of course, but give us all the Flints. We all want the Flints. Have to think they're probably done with Duke figures. I think they realize it is a lost leader, maybe. They just can't make their money back like they want to on Duke. We know how that goes. It makes sense. But I have to think we'll see more retro style figures, and I think that's the good yin and yang they can do there. You get something in the classified line, and then you get a similar but different, more akin to the old cartoons, comics in the retro line. So I love how those things are going at the same time as well. A lot of excitement on both sides of those. Want to see that continue. I'd love to see in 2025 more teams complete. Let's get the Tiger Force team complete. Let's get Night Force complete. Let's get all those characters out there. Let's work to complete these teams. Obviously, it's not a sprint, it's just a normal race, I guess is what it is. So they're diving into that, but I would love to see them diving even into the Eco Warriors. Let's get that Flint-led team of the Eco Warriors. Flint's so far ahead of everybody else, trying to save the planet like a young Captain Planet way back when, but Eco Warriors would be an interesting one. There's some crazy things there. Be interested to see if they go into some of the space elements of G.I. Joe. We get some of those monsters from space. I'm not sure how that'll go over, but I would also love, because talking about completing teams, I'd love to see Cobra Law finished off. Get me Pythona, get me Globulus, get me the Royal Guard, get me anybody else from that era. I would love to see more of that. I'd love to see a subset from the G.I. Joe animated movie even. Give us some of those looks like Cobra Commander in his winter gear. I'd love to see some of the Joes in those winter jackets. I'd love to see stuff like that. We'll see where that dives in the future. Of course, one other thing to talk about with them is what kind of vehicles are we going to get? We'll talk HasLab in a second, but we've been getting traditional vehicles at our Target stores, for example. Would love to see the Awe Striker personally, just for childhood reminiscing and storytelling ability on the channel. But the AWE Striker was a very good one for me as a kid. I would love to see a modern update that wouldn't break the bank. Same thing on the Dreadnought side, the Thunder Machine, a lot of rumors. I love the Thunder Machine as a kid. Would love to see one in the classified line. Have to think with all the Dreadnoughts they've been making, we might get something like that in the future. We'll have to see what happens, I guess, in the future for that. And then last but certainly not least, a little bit of the HasLab talk. What could be the HasLab this year? We've seen land, we've seen air. I think it is time to go to the sea. I would love to see a killer whale. That could be an all-timer as far as price point, though, but I would love to see that one. I would also love to see the Cobra Moray. So if we could do the next 2 years as sea vehicles, it makes sense. You went to land, you go to air, you go to the sea. We'll see if that ends up netting out there, but I would love to see both of those. Two childhood favorite vehicles of mine. I still remember it like it was yesterday, getting both of those vehicles on different occasions. One on spring break, one on a nice summer day, where I got Mexican food at Chi-Chi's for the first time and got food poisoning. Oh, the tale of a day. Of course, the highest of highs to get the killer whale, the lowest of lows to be puking and throwing up my guts out at Chi-Chi's restaurant. Yeah, shout out to Chi-Chi's, out of business. That's what happens. You do me wrong, you go out of business. Don't even try to start back up Chi-Chi's. There's too much competition in this day and age. We'll see. But we'll see what happens with Chi-Chi's. We'll see what happens with the HasLabs for those. And a little asterisk that I would like to see. I know the classified team said they'll never make a flag, and I totally understand it. And I personally kind of hope they don't, because I don't have room for it, and I think most people don't have room for it. And it would just sicken me to have to look at that in other people's collections and say, why don't I have this? I got to make room for this. I'd have to find a way. But I do feel there is a way, and I'm shocked that there hasn't been a third-party company. Let's pick on Extreme Sets, for instance. I feel like you could 3D print or something, or make something, or this could be Hasbro for all intents and purposes. Let's make something, you know, the guts of the flag, you know, where all the people sit, you know, where you steer the ship, all that. Have that traditional plastic. Maybe it's, you know, $250, whatever it may be. I don't know. They'd have to figure that out. But let's make that a traditional plastic. But then we've seen Extreme Sets. We've seen these backing boards and things. Pretty sturdy, heavy-duty cardboard. I think you make the rest of the flag out of that so it easily connects in, it easily connects out, and it could fold up into a nice thing, take your room down. I think it would be a game changer for figure photographers. I think there's meat on the bone right there. I think people understand that, and I just think that is a winning idea. It could be no different than my table. You just fold these up if you want to, and you're off. You plug it back in, and then all you got is the main guts of the flag that you could have even a handle on the top, and you could pick it up, and it would be just this big, maybe this wide. I think there's a lot of meat on the bone there. I think people would do that, and I'm honestly shocked some third-party company hasn't thought about that, because I think it could very easily be done. Would love to see something like that, though, officially from the classified brand. I think that would be something fun in 2025 or maybe even beyond. So there's my top 10 of things I just hope to see in 2025. As we always say, constant learning, constant improvement. Every day when you put your feet on the floor, hopefully you're better than the day before. And that's what all these toy companies should be hoping and reaching for every single day. And we're going to follow it all along on the channel this entire year, just like we did last year. And we're celebrating the 5-year anniversary of the channel this year, which should be pretty fun. I'm already working on a 5-year anniversary special for sometime in March. Should be really fun. A lot of special guests, a lot of announcements, and a lot of surprises in that video. It's going to be, dare I say, an all-timer you're not going to want to miss. And hopefully we can do a bunch of giveaways around that as well. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, get after that right now. We're on the hunt for 50,000. Love to be there by March. We'll see if it can happen. Fingers crossed. It's going to be a close one, of course, but we'll see where that ends up going. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you like this video, and make sure in the comments down below you put your wish list for 2025 for all these brands or whatever brand you want to talk about in the comments. Of course, don't forget to check me out on Patreon. Don't forget SirPaul64 on the X, _Kyle_Peterson on Threads, Instagram, and of course, back on TikTok. So for Wish List 2025, I'm Kyle. See you guys all real soon.